I saw her on a TV show, and I had never seen her before, and I said, that's it. I said, whoever she is, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to take a chance. And we did, and she was wonderful.
Robert Redford wasn't just a movie star. He was the heartbeat of an era when Hollywood felt magical and larger than life. For many of us, his films aren't just memories on a screen. They're snapshots of our own lives, a first date at the theater, a family movie night, or the moment a single line of dialogue stayed with us for years. But behind the charm and the golden boy image, Redford carried a story almost no one knew. A love so deep and so carefully guarded that when he finally spoke of it, even Hollywood's insiders were stunned. What he revealed and why he waited so long changes the way we see him forever. If Robert Redford ever touched your heart, made you laugh, or reminded you of the magic of movies, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a small way to keep these timeless Hollywood stories alive and to make sure the legends who shaped a generation are never forgotten. Because what you're about to hear isn't in the tabloids or the movie reels. It's the hidden chapter of a life we all thought we knew, and it begins with a confession that no one saw coming. Long before Robert Redford was Hollywood's golden boy, he was just a kid from Santa Monica who knew what it meant to struggle. Losing his mother when he was still a teenager left a quiet ache that never quite healed, and for a time he drifted, trying to make sense of the world without her steadying hand. Before he ever stood in front of a camera, he stood in front of a canvas, painting his way through grief and searching for beauty wherever he could find it. By the late 1960s, Redford's talent and undeniable charisma made him impossible to ignore. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid didn't just make him a star, it made him a symbol of a generation that craved adventure, rebellion, and authenticity. Films like The Sting cemented his status as one of the most bankable and beloved actors of his time. But fame, as dazzling as it was, came with a price. Redford watched other stars lose themselves to the Hollywood machine. Privacy shattered, personal lives turned into tabloid headlines. He wasn't willing to let that happen. Behind the charming grin and movie star swagger was a man determined to guard the parts of himself that mattered most. Friends have said that even in those early days, there was a softness in him, a depth, that suggested he carried a private world no camera could ever capture. And somewhere in those whirlwind years, quietly and without fanfare, he crossed paths with someone who would change him forever. A woman whose love would anchor him in a way even the brightest spotlight never could. Do you remember the first Robert Redford film you ever saw, or the one that made you a fan? Share it in the comments below. You'd be surprised how many of us discovered him in the very same movie. It wasn't at a glamorous Hollywood party or a red carpet premiere where Robert Redford's greatest love story began. Instead, it was in a moment so ordinary, most people would have overlooked it. Friends say it was during a quiet evening gathering, a small dinner away from the flashbulbs, when he first noticed her. She wasn't the loudest in the room or the one seeking attention. She was the kind of woman whose presence made the room feel steadier, warmer. Redford, who had been surrounded by adoration and expectation for years, found himself disarmed. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't Robert Redford, the movie star. He was just Bob, a man suddenly aware of how lonely the spotlight could feel. That night sparked something that neither of them could put into words. It wasn't a Hollywood script moment with fireworks and sweeping music. It was quieter, deeper, like finding a missing piece you didn't know you'd been searching for. As their connection grew, he realized she wasn't interested in his fame, his wealth, or the glittering world he inhabited. She saw the man beneath all of that, the one who still carried his mother's memory, who sometimes doubted himself despite the world's applause. For Redford, that understanding was more valuable than any award or headline. They would share stolen weekends far away from Los Angeles, choosing mountain trails over gala events and handwritten notes over public declarations. Those close to Redford said that during this time, his smile changed. It became easier, more genuine. He was no longer performing for an audience. He was living for himself and for her. What makes this story so remarkable isn't just that one of Hollywood's brightest stars found love. It's that he managed to protect it, to nurture something so personal in a world that devours private lives for entertainment. Have you ever experienced a moment that changed your life in an instant, even if it didn't seem extraordinary at the time? Share your story in the comments. You never know who might connect with it. As Robert Redford's career soared through the 1970s and 80s, the world only saw the golden image, the ruggedly handsome leading man, the Academy Award-winning director, the Hollywood rebel with a conscience. But away from the cameras, Redford was quietly making choices that would shape his life forever. While other stars chased every role, every headline, and every party, Redford chose something else: balance. He turned down scripts that could have added millions to his fortune simply because they didn't speak to him. He skipped glittering premieres to spend time in the mountains or at home, preserving the love that grounded him. Hollywood often mistook his privacy for aloofness, but those who knew him understood. Redford wasn't hiding from fame. He was protecting the things that fame couldn't buy. There were sacrifices. Friends remember him missing opportunities that might have elevated him even higher in the public eye. Producers grumbled when he walked away from guaranteed blockbusters. But Redford didn't measure success by magazine covers or studio pressure. For him, the measure of a man was in the quiet choices, choosing to be present for the people who mattered, even when it meant disappointing an industry that expected him to always perform. During these years, Redford's activism and commitment to independent filmmaking also came into focus. He poured his heart into Sundance, not for accolades, but to give new voices a chance. Filmmakers who, like him, believed that stories mattered more than spectacle. And through it all, that private love remained his anchor. Away from the noise, he built a world where trust and tenderness thrived. Few knew the full story, and fewer still were ever invited inside. Has there ever been a time when you chose your values or your loved ones over what the world expected of you? Share your thoughts. Your story might resonate with someone else watching. For decades, Robert Redford managed to keep his deepest feelings tucked safely away. Even as interviewers prodded and tabloids speculated. But in a rare, candid moment later in his life, he let the world glimpse the man behind the legend, and what he shared stunned even those who thought they knew him best. It was during a quiet, intimate interview, not a red carpet spectacle or a publicity stunt, that Redford spoke about the woman who had been the quiet force in his life. His voice wavered slightly, and for a moment, the famously composed actor seemed vulnerable, almost shy. He revealed that through all the fame, fortune, and chaos of Hollywood, this woman's love had been his safe harbor. She had seen him at his weakest, had held him through heartbreaks the public never knew about, and had reminded him of who he was when the world tried to define him. Redford admitted that he had feared sharing this part of his life, worried that exposing something so precious would invite intrusion or cheap headlines. But as the years passed, he realized that honoring her and their story mattered more than his need for control. He spoke of stolen mountain walks, late-night conversations under starlit skies, and a connection that wasn't about fame, but about two souls finding home in each other. The revelation rippled across Hollywood. Colleagues who had worked alongside him for decades admitted they had no idea how deep this love ran. To many, it was a reminder that even in an industry built on illusion, there are still stories too genuine to script. And for those watching, it wasn't just a confession, it was an invitation to reflect on their own lives. Redford's words reminded people that no matter how successful, admired, or untouchable someone might seem, we all carry quiet stories of love, loss, and longing. Did Robert Redford's confession surprise you, or did you always sense there was more to him than the Hollywood image? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might spark a conversation with other fans who felt the same.
Robert Redford's confession didn't just tug at the heartstrings of his fans. It reshaped the way people viewed him entirely. For years, he'd been the picture-perfect leading man, charismatic, unflappable, and larger than life. But by opening up, he reminded everyone that behind even the brightest stars are untold stories of vulnerability and devotion. Critics and fellow actors alike began revisiting his work with fresh eyes. Suddenly, those subtle moments in The Way We Were or Out of Africa felt even more poignant, as if the emotions he displayed on screen were drawn from the very love he'd kept hidden. Fans started to see his performances not just as acting, but as glimpses of the man he really was. In Hollywood circles, Redford's honesty became a touchstone, a quiet example of dignity in an age when oversharing often feels cheap. Younger actors cited his confession as proof that a legacy isn't built solely on awards or box office numbers, but on the courage to be genuine. Film historians even noted how his revelation breathed new life into his earlier roles, giving them an emotional weight that audiences could now understand more deeply. And among the people who had followed his career for decades, there was a palpable shift. Redford was no longer just a star from the golden age of Hollywood. He was a reminder of the power of grace, humility, and true connection in a world that often forgets what matters most. In living rooms across America, older fans who had grown up with him felt something stir. His story wasn't just about fame. It was about the values they themselves had lived by: commitment, integrity, and love that withstands the years. Has a celebrity's honesty or vulnerability ever changed the way you saw them, or even inspired you in your own life? Share your reflections in the comments. Your story could encourage someone else to open up too. As Robert Redford gracefully stepped back from the spotlight in his later years, he did so without the drama or spectacle that often surrounds Hollywood retirements. There were no grand announcements or attention-seeking stunts, just a quiet acknowledgement that every story, even a legendary one, deserves a final chapter told on its own terms. In these years, Redford poured himself into the projects and causes closest to his heart. His Sundance Institute continued to nurture fresh talent, giving independent filmmakers a platform to tell stories that might have otherwise been overlooked. Even as blockbuster culture dominated theaters, Sundance reminded the world that film could still be intimate, challenging, and profoundly human. values that Redford himself had championed his entire career. Friends recall that even in private, Redford never stopped being curious. He was always learning, reading, and quietly offering advice to young actors and directors who sought him out. For many in the industry, his guidance wasn't about technique or fame. It was about staying true to your voice, no matter how loud the world becomes. And for the fans who had followed him from Barefoot in the Park to All Is Lost, his later years felt like a full-circle moment. He wasn't just a memory of Hollywood's golden age. He was proof that integrity and passion could endure, even as the industry evolved. His influence reached far beyond the screen, shaping the very fabric of modern cinema and reminding people why they fell in love with the movies in the first place. Across the country, countless living rooms still flicker with his films on quiet evenings. Couples revisit Out of Africa and remember the days they first saw it together. Families introduce The Sting to their children, passing down the magic. And in those moments, Redford's presence feels as alive as ever, a bridge between generations and a symbol of what Hollywood can be when it has a soul. What's the Robert Redford movie you return to time and again? The one that never loses its magic for you? Share it in the comments, and let's see which films hold the strongest memories for all of us.
Robert Redford's life reminds us that even in a world obsessed with headlines and spectacle, some stories remain pure, quiet treasures shared only when the moment is right. His emotional confession didn't diminish his mystique, it deepened it. It showed that beneath the handsome face and award-winning performances was a man who valued love, loyalty, and authenticity above all else. For generations, Redford gave us characters who felt real, men flawed but noble, charming yet complicated. But his greatest role might have been himself, a man who chose privacy over vanity, purpose over profit, and love over the easy applause of the world. That choice made his legacy not just about movies, but about the kind of life worth living. As the years go on, new stars will rise and Hollywood will keep reinventing itself. But there will always be a place for the magic Robert Redford created, a magic born not just from talent, but from the integrity and heart he carried into every part of his journey. Even now, when his films light up our screens, they feel timeless. They bring us back to first loves, quiet Sunday afternoons, or that single line of dialogue that somehow changed the way we saw the world. His story is no longer just Hollywood's. It belongs to everyone who ever found a piece of themselves in his work. So, as you finish this video, take a moment to remember the movies, the memories, and maybe even the people you shared them with. And if Robert Redford ever made you laugh, cry, or believe in the magic of cinema again, go ahead and like this video and subscribe. Not for algorithms or numbers, but to keep the spirit of stories like his alive, to honor a legacy that deserves to be remembered, and to make sure these timeless Hollywood tales continue to be shared. What does Robert Redford's story mean to you personally? Was there a moment in one of his films or in his real-life choices that inspired you? Share your memories in the comments below. Your story could spark someone else's nostalgia tonight.